there's a moment when a joke stops being a joke and it turns into a problem nobody in the building can ignore. Jimmy Kimmel just hit that moment, right? And now it's not even about him anymore. It's about Disney. What? All right, so quick context before we roll anything, because this is one of those stories where the timeline actually matters. A late night host makes a joke about the first lady. A couple days later, there's a security scare involving the president. Then suddenly, the same people who tell you words don't matter start acting real quiet. And now, the White House is responding. Trump is responding, and Disney is sitting there like, hey, looking like a kid who just realized the teacher actually is calling home. Let's run it.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
Wow. Wow. Even Donald Trump said, wow. Jimmy Kimmel, who is in no way funny as attested to by his terrible television ratings, made a statement on his show that is really shocking. He showed a fake video of the First Lady Melania and our son Barron like they were actually sitting in his studio listening to him speak, which they weren't and never would be. And then stated, our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania. So beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you now have the glow of an expected widow, end quote. A day later, a lunatic tried entering the ballroom of the White House of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, loaded up a shotgun, handgun, and many knives. He was there for a very obvious and sinister reason. I appreciate that so many people are, how you say that, insisted. I don't even know. Incest. Yeah, incensed. There we go. Incensed. Okay, I'm going to have to look up the definition of that. Y'all, look, players mess up too now. But incensed by Kimmel's despicable call to violence and normally would not be responsive to anything that he said. But this is something far beyond the pale. Jimmy Kimmel should be immediately fired by Disney and ABC. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. And that right there is where it stops being late night comedy, right? It turns into corporate heat, because when a sitting president says fire him, that's not Twitter outrage, yo. That's pressure. That's definitely headlines right now. That's all I've been seeing. As advertisers asking questions nobody at ABC wants to answer. Notice something too. When the joke is aimed in one direction, it's brave. But when the backlash comes back the other way, suddenly it's dangerous rhetoric. It's real funny how that works. But this didn't even start with Trump. Nope, it did not. It actually started at the podium, y'all.
Much of the manifesto of the would-be assassin is indistinguishable from the words that we hear daily from so many. For example, as the First Lady of the United States pointed out this morning, just 2 days prior to the shooting, ABC's late-night host Jimmy Kimmel disgustingly called First Lady Melania Trump an expectant widow. Who in their right minds says a wife would be glowing over the potential murder of her beloved husband? And having experienced what I did with the First Lady on Saturday night, I can tell you that she was anything but that. This kind of rhetoric about the president, the First Lady, and his supporters is completely deranged, and it's unbelievable that the American people are consuming it night after night after night. As President Trump said on Saturday night at this podium, we as Americans must recommit ourselves to resolving our differences peacefully and uniting around the shared values that make our country great. The deranged lies and smears against the president, his family, his supporters have led crazy people to believe crazy things, and they are inspired to commit violence because of those words. It has to stop.
See, that tone right there, man, that's not outrage for clicks. That's controlled, measured, but direct. She didn't say, we're offended. She said, this kind of language creates consequences. And that's what things get uncomfortable for people who usually run this playbook. Because for years we've been told, words lead to harm, right? Language inspires action until the language comes from the approved side of the room. Then it's suddenly, relax, it's just a joke. They don't get to flip the rules depending on who's talking. That's not how this works. And that double standard is exactly what blew this up on national TV.
Sage Steele is the host of The Sage Steele Show. We used to work for ABC, Disney. Do you think they're going to do anything?
I would say it would shock me if they did based on history. I will say this, yes, almost 17 years, Jesse, working for the Walt Disney Company at ESPN, and they have a history of punishing free speech, but it depends on what the narrative is. For me, it was as simple as saying that I'm against the company mandating you to take a vaccine in order to keep your job while complying. Pulled me off the air, suspended me, took assignments, punishing me for just saying that while complying. Then you have Jimmy Kimmel, who not only mocks the death of Charlie Kirk, but continuously with the hateful rhetoric and now crossing the line, I believe, with what he said about Melania and Donald Trump the other day. So here's the thing. Will they? Who knows? Should they? Absolutely. Bob Iger is no longer the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. We know where he stood with his narratives. It was far, far, far left. Josh D'Amaro is the new CEO of the Walt Disney Company. He's been there for about 6 weeks. He has an opportunity now to reset, to say, you know what? Enough is enough. We as a network are not going to contribute to this hateful rhetoric, and he can drop the hammer now. Iger did it after Charlie Kirk, only after what? After affiliates came to him and threatened, basically. That's the only reason why Iger did it, and Jimmy was right back on the air. If you're Josh D'Amaro, this is your chance, not just to send a message to Jimmy Kimmel, but to all of the other talent, to the executives, and most importantly, to the American people to say, we are better than this. That was not a joke. It was much worse than that. Everybody knows it. It is time, and I hope the new CEO does it the right way.
Why do you think Kimmel keeps making jokes about assassinating Trump? I mean, he can joke about whatever he wants. There's a lot of material. But, you know, and about death, like of people getting shot or almost shot with Charlie. Like, why does he keep going there? Like, what do you think that's about? It's obviously not humor, because it's like not even that funny.
Right. My kids constantly remind me, Mom, stop. Jokes are supposed to be funny. They need to tell that to Jimmy Kimmel, because back in the day, Jesse, he was. I actually remember I was on his show in 2014 when I was still at ESPN, and he was wonderful and he was kind, and certainly we thought differently, but he was different then. Something has taken over with him and many others, and it is dark. I don't want to say evil, but it is as dark as it gets to obsess the way he has over this president. It's one thing to hate him and to disagree with his policies, et cetera. It's another thing to continuously bring up death. Again, ABC, when is enough enough? Disney, you're supposed to be about children and families and promoting positive things. Jimmy Kimmel is the opposite of that. Take a stand. Like, help us recover from this. I'm not going to hold my breath, but wouldn't it be nice to see one network really take a stand for once? Yeah,
that would be interesting to see. And maybe we'll hear something about it tonight. We'll have to tune in after we watch Gutfeld. Sage Steele, good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Now, this is where it gets interesting, because it's not just about the joke anymore. It's about consistency. You had people at Disney getting suspended. Oh, my gosh. People that was getting suspended and pulled off the air. Whew, punished, for saying less controversial things than this. But somehow this stays on TV night after night. So now the question isn't, was the joke funny? I think the question is, why are the rules different depending on, who you are? Why? And once that question hits the public, you can't even put it back in a box, rather. You just can't. Which is why people started, they started to push even harder.
We're going to review your license. This is exactly what the administration must be doing. This is hard power. They should use it against companies like ABC who tell despicable assassination jokes like this. And I can prove this is an assassination joke, Liz. Here we go. Tell the same joke about Michelle Obama. Say it. Say, Jimmy Kimmel, on your show that Michelle Obama should be an expectant widow. Say it about Jill Biden. Say it about Hillary Clinton. You would never, because your show would be canceled mid-show if you ever did a joke like that. And I would agree with that. By the way, by the same rationality, Michelle Obama is younger than Barack, and Hillary's younger than Bill, and Jill Biden's way younger than Joe. And so by Jimmy Kimmel's rationality, you could just make that joke that Jill Biden and Michelle should be expectant widows. He would never dare. He would be ripped offline. He'd be dragged on Blue Sky and Reddit, of all places. No, we can only make that about Donald Trump because that's what they wish for the right. They wished it on my friend Charlie Kirk. He made fun of Charlie Kirk and Erica and his family. He lied about Charlie Kirk's assassination. They do it on purpose. Barack Obama said we didn't know the motive of the gunman when, of course, we do. It's Trump hatred. The other way you could tell that this is a bad joke, Liz, is go to any small town in America. Walk into the dive bar, sit right next to the mechanic or the farmer who's there having a light beer with his wife, and look at his wife and say, "You're an expectant widow." You know what would happen? You'd get your ass kicked out of the bar, across the street, and into the field.
Yeah,
That's what would happen. Because it's a very disrespectful thing to say to anybody. And so I'm really glad that the Trump administration is finally cracking down on ABC for this despicable rhetoric. It needs to end.
Benny, what's the case for ABC and Disney then for this show? I mean, what are their standards? I mean, he already dodged cancellation for making similarly offensive jokes about Charlie Kirk's assassination last September, as you point out. And now Obama's former top aide, David Axelrod, calls out Jimmy Kimmel saying it was tasteless. CNN's Van Jones says he should basically dial it back. I mean, he's coming off as an activist and not a comedian. And he cried the day after Trump won.
Yes, that's right. Nobody wants to see this from their late night comedy. You go to comedy in order to get a release from the propaganda of the world and some of the bitterness and the anger and the vileness. Disney needs to get back to what they do best, which is family entertainment, and then providing that comedy. And I'll just say this, Disney's year-to-date stock is down 10 points. I know this is a business show and a business network. This is very, very bad for Disney. This is bad business. Nobody wants to watch this. And we want to see comedy again. Well done to the Trump administration cracking down on this.
Great points. Benny Johnson, thank you so much for being with us. It's good to see you again. Come back soon. Now we've got...
Now, that's the part nobody on late night wants to touch, right? Because it exposes the game. It's not really about, what's said. It's about who's allowed to be said about. Who is this allowed to be said about? You already know the answer, to that test, right? Everybody does. But, try that same joke with a different name like Obama. You see how long that segment stays on there? Exactly. So when people are confused about why this blew up, they're not confused. They just don't want to say it out loud. But the audience, they're not playing along like they used to. Not even a little bit.
How on earth does Jimmy Kimmel still have a show? People actually watch this trash.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
You hear the laughs? Who was laughing at that? The room should have got quiet and awkward. That's the kind of thing a resentful cuck says at 3 a.m. while doom scrolling late night. Seething that Donald Trump is alive and well and back in the White House with the most beautiful first lady in modern history. Melania looks like she was sculpted with talent and grace. You look like a damn bloated thumb. Where's Will Smith when you need him? Well, get up on there and smack the shit out of this guy. It's what I would say if I was a violent, disgusting liberal like you. You guys got problems, man. Get some help. Real talk. How on earth does Jimmy Kimmel still have a show?
I don't know. And that right there is the raw reaction that you get. No PR filter, no corporate Disney talking points, because for a lot of people, it's not even political at this point. It's just basic common sense. You don't joke about someone's spouse in a way that implies harm. And then turn around and try to lecture everybody about tone and decency. That's why it feels off. Not because it's edgy, but because it's obviously selective. And when people start noticing selective outrage, that's when trust disappears. Which ultimately leads us to the final point.
Democrats are the dumbest people on the planet. The dumbest. I'm watching every one of them destroy themselves. They get online or they get up in front of audience and they say the dumbest things to destroy themselves. Look at Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel is done. I just want y'all to understand this. He's done. He has no more credibility. Nobody cares for him. And after that comment that he made to Melania, saying that she looks like a widow, he's done. He's done. He is done. Let me tell you something. Melania, she responded. And once the wife, people don't understand this. Most of the time, the wife is the one keeping the husband calm. if she's not a treacherous person. Usually it's the wife that says, oh, honey, you know, they're just being who they are. Don't worry about it. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it phase you. You just keep doing you. Not now. Not this time. Jimmy's done. He is done. That was the most disrespectful thing that you could say. When you tell a person they look like a widow, he's done. He's done. He is done. And he did it to himself. And I'm here for it. Where's my popcorn? It's just like when Jesus told Moses, tell Pharaoh to let my people go, but he's not, because I want to lay my hand on him. He's going to harden his heart. Oh, Jimmy's heart is hardened so much that he didn't talk himself right on out of a career. He has talked himself right on out of accreditation. He has talked himself out of friends. He's getting ready to be alienated out here, because tell us how you really feel, Jimmy. Don't nobody watch that dry show with that dry comedy. They lying to you. You ain't funny. You suck. We know you in them Epstein files. We know you grabbing your ankles to get to where you are. You are done. He is done. I am here for it. Go back.
She said, you're done, son. If you've been watching Chappelle's show before, you know. But it might sound harsh to somebody who's a little sensitive, but, you know, what she's really saying is something deeper. Credibility isn't lost in one moment. It's lost when people realize you're not playing fair. When the joke feels one-sided. When the outrage feels scripted. When the rules only apply to certain people. Eventually, the audience checks out. Not because they're told to, but because, you know, they can see it for themselves. So, here's the bigger picture. This really isn't about Jimmy Kimmel. He's just the latest example of something that's been building for a long time, which is a system where certain voices get protected and others get punished. And for a while, that worked. But now, people are comparing notes, right? They're watching the same behavior get treated two completely different ways. And they're done pretending not to notice. That's why this story has weight. Not because of one joke, but because of what it exposes. If you're going to tell the country that words matter, then they have to matter across the board. If you're going to enforce standards, they have to apply evenly. Because the second people realize that rules aren't real, I mean, you can only expect them to stop respecting the people who make them. And once that happens, man, that's not just a big segment on TV anymore. It becomes a problem that spreads beyond one show, one network, or, you know, a headline. So if you made it to the end of this video, I want you to write same rules, because they need to apply equally. That way I know you made it to the end and the algorithm ain't dripping on me. Y'all be safe. Go check on somebody today. You can quite literally be saving their life. Peace.